Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report, we're going to be doing kind of a viewer requested item, something that's more affordable. In the recent past, I've had some amazing opportunities to review some very high-end guns, things that are top tier. But some of my viewers have asked, hey, can you review something for the rest of us? Something that we all can get? Well, I put out the call on the Texas Gun Vault 2, my behind the scenes channel, and some of my local fans and subscribers stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we have a few guns you might want to shoot and review. And this is one of them. The Kel-Tec PF-9. This is a compact single-stack 9mm pistol from Kel-Tec that is designed primarily for the concealed carry market. And when I say it's affordable, it's pretty affordable. I think it's one step up from a Saturday night special. Now, when it comes to Kel-Tec, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with them. Primarily because I've shot a few of their guns, and they've actually fallen apart at the range. I've never been a big fan of their construction and their build, but I've always loved how they innovate. They're a very creative company, and I wish more companies would think outside the box like they do. They have amazing ideas. They just execute them very, very poorly. But this gun seems to be a little bit different. This one's not put together with a bunch of screws and nuts and bolts. It actually looks like a pretty typical semi-automatic pistol. So hopefully this one is going to shoot well. I do know this is a discontinued model, but I still think this review will be relevant because there's so many of these in circulation. You might own one or might be looking at getting one. So hopefully I can bring you some good information. But before we talk about this gun, all of its specs, and get it to the range, as always, I want to thank the people that help make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this pistol. He's a local fan and subscriber, as I mentioned. His name is Jack. In fact, he's the first person named Jack that has done this for the channel. I now have 2 Jacks, but he's Jack number 1. So thank you again, Jack, for all you do for the Texas Gun Vault community. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I could not create this content without them. And if you want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, there's a link in the description below, and you get to see all these videos early. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who provides all of the ammunition for these range reports and makes them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And you know how in so many of my videos I talk about Brownworks and putting his grips on guns like 1911s, Beretta 92s, CZ75s, and Browning high powers. Pretty much mid-tier and higher end guns, but there's a lot of guns out there that are more affordable, like this Kel-Tec. And some of those guns take wood panel grips. Maybe you have a Rock Island Armory 1911 and you're looking to dress it up. Well, I can tell you a set of Brownworks grips is the way to go. So you need to go check out his website. Brownworks is a custom grip company, making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark, the owner, is an artist and a craftsman. He can apply custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, finish the grips in a wide variety of colors. He can create his own laminate woods and even apply exotic materials like snake skin and alligator skin to make these grips unique and one of a kind. And trust me, the cost of these grips are very affordable. You would be amazed what a set of custom grips costs, and they will really class up your gun. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. So please go over there, see everything he has to offer, and when you place your first order for a set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so we have a lot to talk about when it comes to this tiny little Kel-Tec pistol. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera, give you some close-ups. We're going to talk about the trigger and all of its specs. So let me adjust the camera and let's see what this pistol is all about. So let's go ahead and get some close-ups of this Kel-Tec PF-9. If you know anything about Kel-Tec or ever held them, you can definitely tell this is a Kel-Tec without even having to look at the make and the model. It has that typical Kel-Tec grip texture to it. We also have a screw holding on the extractor. Lots of Kel-Tecs use nuts and bolts and screws, which I don't like, but I'm sure it makes manufacturing these a little bit easier. This is a compact, lightweight pistol designed for concealed carry. It was originally released in 2006 and retired in 2022. It was succeeded by the P-15. It is chambered in 9mm. It has a 7-round single stack magazine. Its overall length is 5.85 inches. It has a 3.1 inch barrel. It has a height of 4.3 inches and a width of 0.88 inches. So it's very, very thin. And according to their website, it has a 5-pound trigger pull. And this is a very interesting trigger pull because it's kind of a blend between a double action and a single action feel. The gun is a single action pistol, but the trigger pull definitely feels like a double action pull length. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a moment when I get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge to actually test this trigger out. So let me go ahead and get out that gauge and let's get some close-ups of this trigger and I'll show you how it works. So let's go ahead and get some close-ups of this Kel-Tec PF-9's trigger in it. And I did mention it's kind of awkward because the initial take-up feels like a double-action revolver, but this is a single-action semi-automatic pistol. So let me go ahead and drop the magazine, ensure there is no ammunition in it, and of course, safety check the firearm, ensure there is no ammunition in the chamber either. So, in order for you to fire this gun, you have to rack the slide, and that hammer has to be cocked. But really, it's kind of at a half-cocked position, because then when you pull the trigger back, you're actually pulling that hammer back further. You can see it here in the rear of the slide. So that functions like a double-action revolver. Eventually, you'll pull it back far enough, it will go click or bang, depending on what you want it to do. And then, of course, the slide would cycle, and the reset is a little bit long, and then you have kind of a heavier take up back to a very spongy wall. But that initial take up on that first pull makes you feel like it's a double action revolver. And I don't like this because it has a heavier trigger pull. However, if this gun does not cycle or it malfunctions or you have a light primer strike, you don't have double strike capability like you would on a double action revolver. So for me, it's kind of the worst of both worlds. So let me go ahead now and get out the trigger pull weight gauge. Let me clear any of the averages and let's actually see what this trigger pulls at. So for the first pull, we have 5 pounds, 13.9 ounces. And that's actually lighter than I was expecting it would break. Then we have 5 pounds, 4.1 ounces. Five pounds, 7.1 ounces. 5 pounds, 3.4 ounces. And finally, 5 pounds, 5.6 ounces, which gives us an average of 5 pounds, 6.8 ounces. And I am honestly very surprised because I didn't feel like this trigger would actually measure at that weight. It definitely feels heavier to me, but maybe that's because the trigger pull is so long and it's so hard to stage. So if you like very crisp triggers like those in 1911s or 2011s, you're probably going to hate the trigger in this particular gun. But if you like the guns from companies like Carr that have very double action feeling mushy triggers, you're probably going to love this gun just as well. So the next thing I want to do is show you how to field strip it because I don't think it's very obvious. So this is actually a very simple gun to field strip for cleaning and maintenance, but it's not very obvious. There are certain things about it that look like other semi-automatic pistols, but I actually had to look this up because I don't have the owner's manual with this pistol, and it looks like we have a lever right here, which would be typical for disassembly, and a notch in the slide. So it's pretty obvious. We're going to drop the magazine, of course, and then lock the slide open. And now those two things seem to line up. So I tried to push up on it, push in. I couldn't figure it out. So what you're supposed to do is get something to pry up on that little pin, and then it simply just pops out. Some people say they can get that out with their fingernail. I cannot. Then you'll grab the slide and let it go home slowly, and then it will come off of the frame. And then we can take out the recoil spring assembly, which is actually two different springs, if I can get those out. And there we go. We have a smaller and a larger one. And of course, then we can take out the barrel out of the slide. And that is a complete field strip of this pistol. I told you, it is very simple and very easy. So to put it back together, we will drop in the barrel. Then let's put our recoil spring assembly back together. The little one goes on first, then the big one, and then we can put that into the slide. And you gotta make sure everything lines up perfect. Otherwise, it will not go back on the frame. Then we can put the slide on the frame. And you gotta be a little bit careful here and make sure that the barrel stays forward. I've found that sometimes it comes back too far with the slide. And as you can see, not everything is lining up like it's supposed to. And this is that Kel-Tec quality I was talking about earlier. So not everything is coming together like it should. You can see that barrel is kind of floating in there, and it shouldn't be that way. It should stay forward. So let's see if I can finagle that into place. And unfortunately, I can't. So I'll take that off, move this around a little bit, and try it again. As I said, this is kind of a weird pistol. And there it is again. So I am having trouble, and this is one of the things I have discovered with Kel-Tecs I don't like. So now I think I've pulled it forward enough, and you've got to then pull the slide all the way back, and there we go. Now the barrel is forward, and now we can simply just put in that pin, and it will snap in. And that's it. Yeah, but why that barrel will go back further than it's supposed to, I have no idea. It just seems to be really out of spec. But if everything lines up, it should go back together. So I'm glad I was able to document that. So that is the field strip and reassembly procedure on the Kel-Tec PF-9. So now let me readjust the camera, and we're going to talk about all the things about this gun that I like and don't like. And as always, before going to the range, I always want to talk about the things that I like and don't like of any firearm that comes through this channel for review. And I always want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun is the simplicity of the design. It kind of reminds me of the AK-47. Obviously, it has loose tolerances and there's not a lot of moving parts. So hopefully that means it's going to be very reliable. Sometimes I think companies over-engineer their guns. They create amazing locking systems and very small, intricate parts. But the more parts a machine has, the more likely it is to break. So hopefully, as I said, this is going to be a very reliable gun. I love the simplicity of it. I'm also a big fan of its weight. Since it is designed for concealed carry, and probably it's small enough to pocket carry with some people, having it so light is probably going to be a huge advantage. It's made of a lot of polymer, so that could be a good or a bad thing depending on your position, but the weight of this pistol is surprisingly light. Now, there are a few things about this gun that I don't like, and I know that's probably not a big surprise to you if you know me and my thoughts on Kel-Tec. Well, the first thing I don't like about this gun, obviously, is the trigger. I've already shown you that earlier when we weighed the trigger, and I showed you how it worked. I don't like these mushy triggers with a long take-up. I like to be able to stage my triggers. Then, I'm not a big fan of the Kel-Tec build quality. Why do they have screws or nuts and bolts on their guns? This one doesn't have many screws and no nuts and bolts, but other models do. But we do have a screw holding in the extractor. Everyone else uses roll pins or regular pins. Why do they have to do this? That does not exude quality in my personal opinion. Then we have the width of this pistol. Now, I think one of the things people used to love about this gun is the fact that it is so narrow because it's a single stack gun. But for me, I have larger hands. And for some reason, when it comes to guns of any caliber that are very thin, they're not very comfortable to shoot. Even though 9mm is not a hard-hitting caliber, you do have a light gun, so we're going to have a lot of recoil energy coming back into your hand, but in a very narrow space. And sometimes that means it's going to be pretty snappy. And I do have rheumatoid arthritis, so I'm a little bit sensitive to this. So this might be a little bit uncomfortable for me. I kind of prefer these guns to be a little bit thicker so you get more purchase or surface area in your palm. And the last thing I don't like about this is the capacity, only 7 rounds. But this is a gun of its era, a time when people were looking for the smallest and thinnest single stack pistols on the market. So that's what I like and don't like about this gun. So now let's get it to the range. Now there is a caveat for this review. Unfortunately, I only have 1 magazine, but I do want to put more than 7 rounds at a time through it. So I will shoot 7 rounds at a time, cut, put another magazine in, shoot 7 more times so we can get more rounds on paper to actually see how it's working. So as always, when it comes to a pistol, we're going to start at 7 yards. I'm going to put 2 magazines through this, just make sure it functions, see how it shoots, and see if it's accurate. And hopefully, unlike the other Kel-Tecs I've reviewed, it doesn't fall apart. So let's go to the range and see what happens. And I can tell you this is a very snappy gun. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, it's lightweight and it's very narrow, and it kind of hurts my hand. I know some of you guys are going to say, Jason, you're a wimp, but go look at the other guns that I review, and if you guys know anything about the laws of physics, you know a small and lightweight gun is going to recoil more than a larger, heavier one. And once again, I do have rheumatoid arthritis, so this is something I'm a little bit sensitive about. But this gun is not very comfortable to shoot. I also hate that super long reset. But then it comes to the group. And yeah, for 7 yards, that's not very good. And once again, people are going to say, Jason, you're a terrible shot. You need to go get more training. Well, go look at the other guns that I review. Normally, I don't shoot guns this bad. Now, the group isn't terrible. It would be perfectly fine for self-defense at 7 yards, but this gun is not a tack driver. But I know people are going to say in the comment section, I own that gun and I can do a mile-long shot with it every time. I know, I always get those people that claim they can do amazing things with the guns I don't shoot well. But maybe that's the case. But for me, it's shooting okay, I guess, but it has a snappy recoil. So now the next test I'm going to do is simply double the distance of the target, put 2 more magazines through it, and just make sure it continues to function well and see if I can shoot it any better. And yeah, the group got worse, and you saw there were a few rounds really low on the target. Some people are going to say you're anticipating the shot. Well, I know that I'm not anticipating the shot, but I know what's causing that. The trigger. The trigger is just so long, and I know as I'm pulling that trigger back, I'm pulling the front of the gun down a little bit. I just don't shoot these heavier double action trigger pulls very well. The same goes for double action revolvers. Now give me a single action revolver or a single action pistol like a 1911 or a 2011, I'm perfectly fine. But this is a gun I would just have to get used to. And I know some people are going to tell me they love this gun and this trigger. It's perfect for concealed carry. And if that is the case, I'm very happy for you. And I don't think you're making a bad choice. I'm just saying, if you're like me and like triggers a certain way, you're not going to like this trigger very much. So now I want to see what the best group I can get with it is, talking about the accuracy. And so I want to remove as much of the human element out of the equation as possible. So I'm going to set the target out at 25 yards, shoot this from a bench. I'm just going to put one magazine through it and just see what the best group I can get with it is. And it looks like we have our first malfunction, a failure to extract. I was kind of wondering if that was going to be the issue we were going to experience because the design of this extractor is not normal. It's held on by that screw, so I don't know how powerful that extractor is. I also noticed upon reviewing the range footage that all of the spent brass is pretty much going straight up, not to the side, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Something else I'm noticing is whenever I insert the magazine, often it gets caught on that magazine catch. Sometimes I have to really push it beyond that to seat that magazine. It doesn't slide in as easy as I would hope. That's what she said. So now the next test I want to do is make sure this thing is going to run hollow points, because this gun is designed for concealed carry, and of course you want to know, will it run hollow points? Because that's probably what you're going to put in the magazine. So let's go back to the range, make sure we don't have any function issues, and see how it runs with 9mm plus P. And it looks like we had no issues and no failures, so we're going to say that test was a success. And even the group was a little bit better. Now, normally the next test I do is the quick magazine change test, but I already told you I only have one magazine. So we're just going to try to shoot one magazine through this gun as fast as I possibly can. Now, this trigger is horrible. It has a very long reset. So unlike those really fancy 2011 pistols I've recently reviewed, I don't think I'll be able to get this gun going and shooting very fast. But we'll have to see. but I have to make sure I'm safe with it. So let's go back to the range and see how fast I can pull this trigger. And hopefully you've seen some of my other reviews where I shoot semi-automatic pistols pretty darn fast, because I can't shoot this one fast at all. And that's because of the trigger and the very long reset. I absolutely hate it. Now, I know some people are going to love it because they love double action revolvers and want a semi-automatic pistol that feels like that. But for me, this is the kind of pistol I would not personally carry because I prefer triggers with shorter resets. And I can imagine if I'm in a life or death situation and I have to pull a gun like this, I might not be thinking to release the trigger all the way and have my finger touch the front of the trigger guard. And so I might not have a full reset and the gun won't go bang when I need it. But maybe, as I said, that's the way you train and what you like. But because of that trigger pull, I can't shoot this gun fast at all. Now, I was actually kind of surprised by that group because I was just point shooting. But I can tell you the gun was hurting my hand, and I did feel it the next day after the range. Because once again, I have that rheumatoid arthritis, and the gun was honestly kind of snappy. So I personally would go in a different direction with a gun that was a little bit more comfortable for me. But this might be the perfect gun for you. So what are my final thoughts on the Kel-Tec PF-9? Well, I can definitely see why some people would love this gun. It did work for the most part. Its accuracy was okay. It's definitely better than nothing. And some people just love them some Kel-Tecs. And I'm not going to besmirch them for it because I like certain guns other people don't like. For me, this gun does hurt to shoot because it is so light and so narrow. The trigger honestly sucks and it has very low capacity, but it generally worked. So I can't really deduct any points for that. So all of my complaints about it are just more personal preferences. But this one didn't fall apart at the range. So good job, Kel-Tec. You made a decent pistol. So on my star system, how would I rate the Kel-Tec PF-9? Well, I'm going to give this 3 stars out of 5. Mainly because it worked. And all the rounds were on paper. So if you were going to carry this gun, I know it's probably going to be reliable for you and you're going to hit your target. But this is not a competition gun. It's not a race gun. It's none of that. And this isn't even a very fun gun to shoot. But if you need something really small, very thin, and very light, that's most likely going to work. This one might work for you. So tell me in the comments section below, what do you think about Kel-Tec? And have you ever shot a PF-9? And what do you think? Do your experiences mirror mine? So, as always, thanks for watching. So I don't know if that means it's going to be a snappy gun for me to shoot. And then finally, the last thing about this gun that I don't like, I can't remember because I didn't memorize my script and now I have to do this whole thing again.